right, let's do it. Let's hit the books. Part of the Hammer Betting Network, sponsored by FanDuel, alongside the man, the myth, the legend himself, Joey Knish. I'm Brad Powers, and we are tackling the big topics of discussion as far as the 2025 college football offseason. And we'll get to, a big time brand that happened to make the national championship game, the Fighting Irish and Notre Dame. And the question is going to be is, after that run to the national championship game where they ended up losing to Ohio State, can Notre Dame repeat that type of success in 2025? It's going to be tough to repeat winning 3 playoff games, but I can tell you this: the expectation that I'll put the parameters on this video is, will Notre Dame be a playoff team in 2025 again? I'll just, before I get deep into it, I'm going to give you my answer, and I'm anxious to hear what you got to say, Knish. I am buying Notre Dame being a playoff team again in 2025. Tell me where I'm wrong.
Well, I'll tell you, the first is that, the free square, which was a lot of their schedule in 2024, is a little different ball game coming into this one here, because they're going down to Miami to start it off. They got Texas A&M, they got Boise State, they got USC again. So I tell you what, I think this year, the level that they're going to have to play at, and some of the, the games that they were able to win with the tight physical defensive football last year, I think this year's Notre Dame team is going to have to be better than last year's Notre Dame team to reach anywhere close to the same point that they were, to get to a playoff, to get to that. And I know they're bringing a decent amount back here, but this is an offense that I need to see have a lot more firepower coming into 2025 if they want to get back to the playoff, because that, that ground and pound and that we're going to play defense is nice, but it makes you a lot easier to get clipped in some of these, tight games when you're playing good opponents. So you're going to have to sell me on this Notre Dame offense being a little bit more high octane this year than what I just witnessed, in last year's run.
So the reason I'm buying Notre Dame is I think there's going to be a little bit of misperception as far as the offense. Now, hand up, Riley Leonard's one of my favorite Notre Dame players. He only played 1 year. He's one of my all-time favorite Notre Dame players for what he did for Notre Dame in 1 year. Still left a lot to be desired, Riley Leonard did, when it came to throwing the football. Great runner, but as a passer, left a lot to be desired. What also left a lot to be desired was the wide receiver core. However, I think it's going to be much better. Well, we got to witness maybe a star emerging a little bit in the last 2 games against Penn State, against Ohio State. In the weeds a little bit here, but his name was Jaden Greathouse. Went for over 100 yards in both games and multiple touchdowns in those 2 games against the best of the best when it comes to defense. So I think there's a possibility he can be a 1. Again, in the weeds, they took a really good transfer portal player from Virginia. Fields is his last name. Had poor quarterback play, but led Virginia in receiving. A big body, 6'5", 220 type that Notre Dame hasn't had the last 5 or 6 years. So I think the passing game can be better. Who's going to be throwing on the football?
There we go.
Yeah. So Steve Angeli right now, I would say, would be the early favorite. We saw him. He came into the Penn State game, boom, bang, right down the field, led him to a field goal at the end of the first half, and that's pretty much what he does the last couple of years. However, post-spring, I think as, the reps mount up, the favorite, and we've talked about it, if you're a longtime listener of the show, CJ Carr, I think, will be the starting quarterback. Now, first start on the road in the Orange Bowl against Miami will be very tough. But I'm buying CJ Carr. You know this. I like the kid since high school. So I think they'll be okay there. More importantly, I think Notre Dame's entire roster is going to be healthier. I don't think people grasp that, how banged up they were. I counted it before we recorded it today. They had 17 players in their 2 deep miss at least 1 start. 17. They had 7 starters, not 2 deep guys, starters that were out for the year. So it's not like you could say, oh, it was a magical run type of thing. No, actually, it could have been better. They could have been healthy. And, very similar to your Detroit Lions. Okay, they had an historically great season as far as wins and losses, but also could have been better. They were also arguably the most banged up team in the NFL. So I think Notre Dame's in a similar boat. If they stay healthier, I think the team, and we're calling it 10-2-ish. I think that's very fair record. I know the schedule is more difficult, but there's not a team on their schedule, including week 1, which is probably their toughest game, where they're going to be a clear underdog. Right now, you can bet the game at our favorite sportsbook, FanDuel. Notre Dame's favored on the road against Miami in that game. And that's their toughest game. So they're going to be favored arguably in every game. I'm buying Notre Dame as a playoff team. I think Marcus Freeman's done a great job of recruiting the last 3-4 years. There's more depth. Al Golden to Chris Ash on the defensive side of the ball, as far as DC, is going to be a downgrade, but I don't think it's a big enough downgrade to get me off of them.
Yeah, it's funny because
where am I wrong?
We've done a little Michigan here in these previews, and it's a little similar to the situation here where you've got a lot of good infrastructure on this team, but you've got one experienced quarterback, we'll call him, that isn't not a high-end talent, and then the younger generation, the next gen coming in and hoping that guy can take the reins, where you're hoping CJ Carr with the big arm and the protege that can come in and start to give this offense a little bit of the electricity that it needs. I think Notre Dame to take the next step. I will say, though, you mentioned it with the injuries. The offensive line was really banged up. Throughout the year, and especially, down the stretch in the playoff. When healthy, because they had a couple of guys hit the portal and get paid pretty good because they were getting bumped out by other guys, or Rocco.
Yeah, I don't think most people know that. They think, Notre Dame lost starters. No, these guys were starters. They were only starters because of injuries.
Yes. So, and that to me is like, if this offensive line is healthy, and you hope you have some regression to the mean there where they can stay healthy, this is a top 5 line, maybe the best in the country when fully healthy here. And to me, that is what can take Notre Dame to the next level. If they can have that offensive line play and run the ball and then add a little bit more over the top in the passing game, then you know what? Hey, you're talking about another back-to-back playoff appearance here.
So again, I hate getting into specifics as far as win total. I do think 10.5 is a little rich. As far as the win total, we've seen a little bit under. When it came out, I had you bet the over. 9.5 was a bad number. So I think 10-2 is the fair number here, which puts them, 50-50 depending on the schedule. I think it's tougher than it was a year ago. And as long as you're not losing to a Northern Illinois, I think it probably puts them back in the playoffs again for the Irish this year. Ooh, that's really juiced towards the under. But again, they're not going to be an underdog in really any game. There's a lot of dangerous games. I'm going to really put you on the spot. Breaking news as we're recording this in February. I don't know if you even know this. They just named a new general manager coming from the Detroit Lions. Do you know anything about this Mike Martin guy? He's director of scouting for, I think, probably number 2 or number 3 guy behind the GM of the Lions.
Yeah, the Kershaw, and again, it's very hard to tell with an NFL team who's the, inside the org, but all the stuff around here on him was positive. And you know what? I tell you, these college GM jobs now it's kind of become a new a way to get yourself up to the next level in an NFL GM job. So I think that's a good hire. And the Notre Dame, we talked about this a little bit. Another comparison to Michigan here is in terms of the overall trend up with the Freeman. I think there were some early questions, but now with the recruiting and kind of the infrastructure that he's got built and some of the coaching staff that he's, put around him, I think Notre Dame is it's not a flash in the pan. I think this is a program that is now going to be in the conversation throughout his tenure as kind of a year in, year out playoff team. Where Notre Dame, as a fan, for the better part of 30 years was kind of living off the name more than substance.
Yeah.
It finally feels like they put the substance back into Notre Dame football. And this is really a team that is going to be in that top 10, conversation year in, year out, as long as Freeman's got it rolling.
I agree. Had to survive some of them major hiccups. And same with Sharon Moore. All about when you're named at a position like that for your first head coaching job, you just got to survive. And how do you respond after getting punched in the mouth? I like the way both have, responded. So I don't know if that's a hard sell on you. That's probably a holding pattern. It's probably price dependent on you on the Irish. You're just not as optimistic as me. Probably is that what you're
But listen, would I lay 210 on an under? No, I'm not going to bet the under 10.5 there, because I tell you what, all those games we talked about are it's front loaded, right? Because if this team goes through, if it's October 4th and this team doesn't have a loss and they've already beat
they're going 12-0
and Boise State, you're going to make the playoff at that point, because the second half of the schedule really lets off the break there. And you've got Navy and you've got Pitt and you've got Stanford. So this would be a team, if you want to bet them either, in the futures market, I think this is a preseason team to take, because if they win those early games, then I think they're coasting back into the playoffs. Where even a loss, even in a 11-1 or a 10-2, I think they're getting back in, depending on the games here. But a win over Miami and a win over Texas A&M, there's going to be nobody that early that's set up to make the playoff than Notre Dame will.
Kind of similar to last year. Opened with A&M, their toughest game. They won it. And all of a sudden, we saw that price as far as the yes, no in their playoffs skyrocket. And then it came right back down after they lost to Northern Illinois. But yeah, I can tell you this. I think there's correlation. You like Notre Dame against Miami. You probably like Notre Dame to go to the playoff because, again, that's going to be their toughest game. So that'll do it for the Fighting Irish. A little early look on the 2025 upcoming season for them. For Joey Knish, I'm Brad Powers. You just watched Hit the Books, part of the Hammer Betting Network, sponsored by FanDuel.